I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Today, we're going to take a closer look at what's been going wrong with Broderick Jones. We'll talk about that, Jaylen Warren's injury, how the Steelers need to adapt with it, and what's been encouraging about the defense in the preseason, all here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. With FanDuel Sportsbook, now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers get $5. If they bet $5, they can get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, Steelers fans, we talked a little bit about Broderick Jones immediately after the game. I've now had time to go over the All-22, study more of what was going right, what was going wrong. There's a lot more wrong than right, but I have more pointed conclusions about where I think he is and what the Steelers need to do. Now, I still maintain the bottom point of what I've been saying since that game. The Steelers need to put all of their offensive players where they expect them to be week one, who's starting, just get into it, ride with it. If Russell Wilson's QB1, he's QB1 for the rest of the time. Don't play around with it. Let him be that guy. If Justin Fields is that guy, go ahead and do that too, but he's not that guy. And again, that's not a diss on Justin. He's just not. But Broderick Jones, if you want him to be the left tackle, move him to left tackle. And if Dan Moore's got to go to right, he's got to go to right. And Zach Frazier, he's kind of has to be the center now because Nate Herbig's hurt. So they don't have to even really worry about that one. But I want to look at specifically why I think what Broderick Jones is going through can be fixed, even if it is just by switching him from right to left. And specifically, it's what I show in a film study that I do for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you're listening to this on or watching this on Monday, it should already be up in the Post-Gazette. Go to post-gazette.com to read it. But I broke down 4 different plays from this game and one play from last year to kind of compare and show what my point was. But the biggest problem with Broderick Jones, we talked about Troy Fautanu in the first week. Remember, he's flipping from left to right. He played left in college. He's playing right in the NFL, and the Steelers are expecting him to translate that very quickly because he was playing the left side, left tackle for a left-handed quarterback, which means he wasn't protecting the blind side, and they're hoping the switch to right will help him out. And we talked about some of his fundamental footwork wasn't right. His drop step messed up for Troy Fautanu. Broderick Jones doesn't have that problem. And this is part of why I think that there's a little bit more than just he's struggling with the right. I do think his injury is getting in the way because you look at at the elbow brace. I've seen Broderick Jones not have the problem that led to what was the major problems in this game. And the major problem was his punching was terrible. His hand usage was non-existent. And if you go back and you watch Broderick Jones last year, there were times he missed with his hand, but it wasn't non-existent. I'm telling you, when you go back and you slow it down, and again, you can go to post-gazette.com to just see the plays that I'm talking about, especially the sacks where he faced Gregory Rousseau. You just see him just he gets his feet quickly. He's in the right space. He's moving. He's right where you want him to be physically. But then when it's time for them to engage, it was like he didn't want to attack Greg Rousseau. And it was kind of that way for really the whole game. Whenever he was in pass protection, especially, he wasn't violently punching into the chest of the opponent. That's what you need to do. The whole point of a guy like Broderick Jones, who's like 6'5" and has the crazy arm length, is that you want him when he's in pass protection to be able to use his natural frame, his natural reach of his arm to keep defenders from getting into his chest level and doing what Gregory Rousseau was, and that's shoving him out of the way. Also, I don't know why I keep calling him Gregory. His name's Greg. I don't know why I keep saying Gregory. It's just a thing. All right. Anyways, but when you look at it, Rousseau each time gets in his chest, uses his hands, and he pushes Broderick Jones out of the way. Now, Broderick Jones is also riding a little high. That's a problem there too. You want to fix that. But to me, it looks like it's a punching issue. And when you're a tackle, oftentimes your outside arm is your main punching arm because you want to keep them out. You want to hit them in the chest. You want to direct them around you. You want to make them have to go all the way around you and then ride them all the way around so they can never get into the pocket. And at right tackle with a right elbow problem, and I think that makes the most sense that's contributing to this problem right now. It becomes even harder for Broderick Jones to use his arms to punch. Now, again, I'm going to reiterate this. I watched up close these two face each other just 2 days before this game, and that punching was not a problem for Broderick Jones. He was not just holding off Rousseau. He was beating Rousseau, and he was beating Von Miller. He looked like he was in control, and it just seemed like he went away in this game. Now, maybe he got injured in between then. Maybe he's worn down because it was 2 days after just being in pads, and maybe there's something there. But I think, again, switching him to left where his main attacking arm, when he's dropping back and he's using his hands to punch and keep the defender from getting across his face and force them around outside, it'll now be his left arm, which kind of goes perfectly for what his injury is right now, and also goes perfectly for where he's supposed to be ultimately. And I just think the Steelers need to get out of their own way in this situation. And I thought that some of the it's fine to experiment in training camp. It's fine to figure some things out here and there. But, and I've said this in years past, I never understood Truth Okorafor being on the right when he's more of a passive tackle and Dan Moore being a more aggressive tackle. Dan Moore would have made more sense as a right tackle, Okorafor as a left, but I guess Dan Moore just can't play right tackle for some reason. I don't know how he gets away with just being a not good left tackle, but that's what it is. But at this point, for the Steelers, Broderick Jones is the franchise guy. He's supposed to be the guy that changes the future, that you build a foundation on, that he is the Marquise Pouncey of this new offensive line era. You want to develop him like that. And you keeping him out of the position that you want him to be because of what Dan Moore is, I just think that's a crucial mistake. I think that you would be better off, even if Troy Fautanu is not healthy, telling Dan Moore to go learn right tackle, or Dylan Cook is going to start. And I know that might sound crazy, but at this point, I think that you are doing a detriment to Broderick Jones's development. And if his arm really is injured, maybe he doesn't need to play. Maybe you should rest him, especially in the preseason right now. But if he's healthy enough to play, and it's just that his arm isn't strong enough, because we've seen guys power through injuries before. Cam Hayward did it all last year. Najee Harris did it when he needed a steel plate in his cleat after he got injured in I think it was 2 training camps ago, and that in the start of 2 years ago. He was slow out of the gate, but eventually picked it back up because once he fully healed. Maybe Broderick Jones is like that, but why not put him in the position where it gives him more protection on that right side, so that he doesn't have to use the right hand to be the attacking hand and the attacking arm when he's in pass protection. That just makes the most sense to me. And again, for those who think, oh, Broderick Jones has always stunk, because there's always random people like that in the comment section. No, he has not. And in fact, in my classroom, I show like, hey, you think that he doesn't ever punch right? Here's a play from when he played left tackle against the Ravens last year, where he perfectly directed his man around the pocket and did it exactly right. And he did it multiple times that game. I used the time, I think it was like Tavius Robinson was the edge rusher facing him. He also did it against Jadeveon Clowney. And there were other times last year too when he did it at right tackle. But again, when you have right now where his right arm is injured, his right elbow's got a brace on it, and he had to talk to doctors after the game. We don't know what's going on there. It just makes more sense. Put him at the natural position where you want him to grow, where he probably feels better playing it, because that's what he did in college, and let him work there. And tell Dan, hey, Dan, go learn right tackle. I don't know what it is about you, but you got to learn how to do it at some point, man. And I've never seen a stick-to-itiveness of keeping a guy at a position that much who's not a game changer that in any time before. So I think it's something the Steelers have to do. I think Broderick Jones will be better off for it. And again, I don't think it's a mental part of his game that's not there. I think he understands. In fact, the second sack the Steelers had in that game, the Bills ran a twist stunt at him to try to confuse him, along with a few other parts of an exotic blitz that they threw at the Steelers. And Russell Wilson does get sacked, but it's not because of Broderick Jones. In fact, the first part is he engages the defensive end who tries to cross his face. He properly doesn't let the defensive end gain ground, passes him off to James Daniels, and then off of that, there's a blitzing linebacker. He perfectly gets to the linebacker and tosses him out of the way, and then he's out of the play. he has the mental acumen. It's not that he's not sure about what he's supposed to do. It's not that he's not sure about where he fits on the offensive scheme or what his job is. I think his right arm is just injured and he's not comfortable throwing punches right now. And if you're playing a physical position, you want him to play a physical style of football, put him in the position on the offensive line that is left tackle that will best advantage him to do that. That is a strong take that I have. I said this on the Final Word Channel 11 last night, WPXI, and I'm saying it again here, and I've said it again in my film study in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Absolutely move Broderick Jones to left. I think it'll be better short-term with his injury, and I think it'll be better long-term for the whole team for him to get used to the position that you want him to be for, the duration of his time with the franchise if he works out to be that kind of franchise offensive tackle. But we talked a lot about Broderick Jones. I want to talk more about other injuries, especially the big injury. It's Jaylen Warren, and we now know that his hamstring injury is serious. He'll be out for some time. We'll be back for week 1. We'll talk about what to expect there on the Locked On Steelers podcast next here. I'm Chris Carter. Stick with us. We still got a lot to talk about. Passion, drive, and patience, that's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts that you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our episode here on the Monday. Now, again, if you want to go get my full post-game reactions to a lot of different stuff, we had the episode up very early Sunday morning so that you guys could check that out. But I want to focus on something I didn't really talk about much in that video, and that was Jaylen Warren's injury. It was a hamstring injury. We didn't know how serious it was. To be honest, I at first I didn't think it was that serious, though. We saw him leave the game. Jaylen Warren, the way I saw him move after that, I thought he'd be able to recover pretty quickly, and it turns out he's not. Tom Pelissero from NFL Network comes out and says, hey, no, this is a serious injury. He'll be out anywhere from like 2 to 4 weeks, and that is alarming because the Steelers, a big part of their offense is the 1-2 punch at running back that they're supposed to have. And Najee Harris, I still think Najee Harris is the best running back on this team. I know a lot of people think that Jaylen Warren is, but I think the whole Thunder and Lightning package or Thunder and Lightning, system that you had going for you with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, without Jaylen Warren, it's just Thunder. And I think that kind of takes away from the chance of the Steelers to be able to dominate teams with the run game. Granted, not like they're blocking too well at this point in the first place. So it's not like, they're missing out on a whole lot. And it is the preseason, but it does seem that Jaylen Warren, he won't be out for too long. Like we do know multiple weeks. We don't know if this means that he's going to miss the season opener. Right now, that is in question, and that's not great because you want to have full strength to start the season. But right now, I think the Steelers, you want to take time. This gives you a chance to look at your RB3 situation, and that I think a lot of that is Cordarrelle Patterson and the flex position that he's kind of in for the team. He floats between kind of receiver and running back there, but also guys like Daijun Edwards, who has been coming up along the bottom of the roster, been trying to fight for the third running back spot. I think at the end of the day, it just is Cordarrelle Patterson's job, because he offers the flexibility of a kick returner who can help as like the fifth option at the wide receiver position and the third option at running back. And he's a bigger guy. He can take it. He can play the running back position, and he can kind of give you that depth there. And ultimately, I said the Steelers needed a guy like that this year because even if Jaylen Warren was healthy, at some point him or Najee Harris are just going to get hurt. It's just, it's bound to happen, especially if you're playing a physical brand of football. If you're running the ball, close to 50% of the time in a game, or you're trying to control a clock, running backs, they're going to take some wear and tear. And that's just a natural part of it, which is why I said all along, they needed to go get a Cordarrelle Patterson. They needed to figure out who could be RB3 and be pretty good there. But I look at this situation, and I think this is a preview of why the Steelers may need to make sure Cordarrelle Patterson sticks around, or finding another running back that fits even better than he does. But I think Jaylen Warren, I think he'll be fine. This is, he's a heck of an athlete. He's very explosive. I don't think this will hamper him too much. And it might even get to the point where you're not sure about him after the Falcons game, and you might just want to rest him so that he is healthy for the rest of the season, and this doesn't become a lingering issue, because sometimes hamstrings can be really weird to recover from. But again, that's why the Steelers were supposed to invest in RB3. I think that's why, I think it's a good thing they have Cordarrelle Patterson. But this is a team that's going to be based on running the football and playing off of that running the football. It's not just running the football 24/7. But giving Russell Wilson a breather, having him, being able to limit how much you're trying to force him to throw in a game. It's going to require the wear and tear of your running backs. It's going to require wearing down teams. And again, that's part of the allure of Harris and Warren as a combo. And I think Patterson can fit into that. But I guess the other part of this is, where do the Steelers find themselves, behind that, if Jaylen Warren's injury carries forward a little bit longer? Like, is Michael Perrine that next guy behind Cordarrelle Patterson? Is it Dyson Edwards? I think Perrine is has had some moments in these things, but also Shamklin has had some moves here and there. Guys who've made the first defender miss. Those types of things are important. So I look at Jaylen Warren. I don't expect him to be out too long. I wouldn't be shocked if Jaylen Warren found a way to recover and be ready for week 1 of the regular season. He's definitely not going to play this week against the Lions on Saturday, but I'm going to reiterate this too. I think the Steelers better play their first team 4 or 5 times against the Lions, or at least until you see them put together some success that they can put on tape and then carry forward with. But again, for a team that's supposed to have their bread and butter be the run game and be playing off the run game and using these running backs, that is a blow. And the Steelers need to, see some help back from that as well. And you got to wonder when some of these injuries that have been kind of lingering around start to lead to players getting back. Peyton Wilson has a concussion from this game. We'll see how long he's out with that. As crazy as it sounds, it might have been more beneficial to him that it was a concussion, because if it was a knee injury or an ankle injury, there'd be a lot of questions long term. Still, you don't ever want a head injury, and not saying that the concussions are good. But with his injury history, I think it's a better suggestion that he'll be fine sooner rather than later. And then, of course, there's the 2 other guys on offense that you're looking at, and they're the 2 rookies, Troy Fautanu and Roman Wilson. Troy Fautanu, had his knee injury. He has a knee brace, on his knee, and he's working his way through it. He's supposed to be out only a couple weeks or so. He's expected to be back before training camp, before regular season opens. But you definitely want to get him back as soon as possible, so that you can get him and Broderick on the same page, get the offensive line to start to gel. And again, it's going to take time for the offensive line to gel. They're not going to do it right away in week 1, but they can be better by week 1 if they start to see the pieces fall in. And of course, can't forget the other injury that's been lingering, and that's Roman Wilson, the wide receiver out of Michigan that was a 3rd-round draft pick. We've seen him walking around. We've seen him without the boot. I think that he's looked fine there. I just think it might be just a matter of there's something that he can't fully do yet. I'll be intrigued to see when they get him back there and ready to practice. But when I look at everything that the Steelers are dealing with, injury wise right now, I don't think it's too terrible. But I do think that they can play this well enough and play this situation well enough that they can try to be ready when these guys are back full strength. Again, Troy Fautanu, if you can get him back and he plugs right in at right tackle, moving Broderick to left, then you start to build your chemistry with the offensive line. So I think that there's a lot of different things that can really build for the Steelers right now if they handle this injury situation correctly. But ultimately, I think it's going to depend on how healthy these guys are, who takes advantage of the opportunities to play in these moments. And if the Steelers can, get guys in there sooner. Again, I go back to my overall point that I've been saying since the game on Saturday. I think the biggest thing is the Steelers offense needs to work together. They need to know who each other are. They need to be on the field at the same time, used to doing that together a lot. And that means Fautanu at right, Broderick at left, Frazier at center. If you want Roman Wilson to be part of the starting offense, work him in there too. And Russell Wilson, that's the other part of this. Russell Wilson needs to be that guy if he's going to be that guy. Let him lock in. Don't force him to do things don't force, him to have to sit on the bench and wait and see if he's got it. Get your first team offense out there, the one that you want to start the season, the one that you hope carries throughout the season. You do that, I think you put yourself in a much better position offensively to start figuring things out with this next preseason game, so that there's at least a little bit more confidence going into the season opener against the Falcons. We've talked a lot of offense. I want to talk some defense. We'll do that next year on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you, this show is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. And you've heard us talk about FanDuel a lot, the #1 sportsbook in America. Well, we have something a little different for you this time around. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV today when they go up and sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Then all you have to have is a YouTube TV base plan, and you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon and out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook today. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here today. We've been talking a lot about the offense, but I do want to rein people in about the defense because I think the defense has looked particularly good in the preseason. I know that they gave up the touchdown to C.J. Stroud in the first game, but this is a defense that ultimately hasn't really shown its stars yet. And I know some people are saying, wait a second, Chris, you're saying that the Steelers offense needs to run their plays with their starters. Why don't the Steelers defense need to do that? Well, it's because the Steelers defense, they know who they are. There's no question of what their system is and how they work together and what does it look like when they're all playing on the, playing at the same time and firing on the same cylinders. I think that's what the Steelers are so confident in. Why TJ Watt doesn't have to play, why Cam Hayward doesn't have to play, while Minkah Fitzpatrick can only has to play 10 snaps. Now, certainly you want to get other guys into the groove of things, guys like Cory Trice, guys like Peyton Wilson, guys who could use from the growing opportunity. And that's where I think the Steelers have been trying to do in these games. And I think they've been doing it pretty well. Guys like Keeanu Benton have looked really good. He only played 15 snaps in the game, but in those 15 snaps, he already caused two pressures to get after the quarterback. I think that he's been pretty solid. He's one of those guys that, like, you put him in the middle of the line, he's gonna properly use his hands. He's gonna create space, and he's gonna win a lot. I think Keeanu Benton is a star in the making. But also, you got to look at Larry Ogunjobi, and Ogunjobi's not a question mark as far as who he is. You know who he is, but Ogunjobi has been a question mark for how consistent he'll be for the Steelers, and at least in this instant, he was pretty consistent. He was pretty sharp. I think that's a good thing when you see that from a Larry Ogunjobi long term, because you need another defensive lineman to pair with Cam Hayward and to pair with Keanu Benton. And I also think the Marvin Leal has done a decent job. Saw him get a pressure as well. But there's a lot of options out there right now the Steelers have on their defense to hold up against tough moments. And I think that's where the Steelers defense is in a really good spot. Like, for example, I don't think everyone's had a whole chance to really evaluate everybody all the time. But the fact that the defense has been holding up for the most part, and key players of the defense have been holding up, I think it's a really good sign. Like Joey Porter Jr. Joey Porter Jr. hasn't done anything spectacular, really. He's kind of just been, growing his game where he can. But he's this is a guy who has not been beat badly in coverage yet, and he's been able to hold it down. I think that Joey Porter Jr. long term, they want him to be the franchise guy, and maybe he'll develop into that guy. But you look at guys like him, guys like Patrick Queen, new guys there, Deshaun Elliott, and even backup guys like Cory Trice, who I think has been really sharp. I just think that there's a lot here to suggest that these glue pieces, these are all the pieces that fit in between your superstars, your TJ Watts, your Cam Haywards, your Minka Fitzpatrick. And maybe Cam Hayward's not a superstar yet, but I'm going to give him the grace of, seeing how he plays this season before we just rip that title off of him. But he has been a superstar defensive tackle for the Steelers over the years. And I think that's where, you look at all the pieces the defense has at its disposal, whether it's the defensive line that I just ran through and why there's so much confidence there, whether it's the linebackers where Elandon Roberts has looked very sharp, Patrick Queen's been adapting to everything, and even Peyton Wilson has been a really good contributor for them. I think that there's hope there as well at cornerback. You got Joey Porter Jr. like I was saying, but you look next to Joey Porter Jr., Dante Jackson, who's been resting. He's not just a viable option. I think he's a good one. And then after him, if Cory Trice comes in, and Cory Trice is the dude who played 29 snaps total in the game against the Bills, and I really didn't notice him getting beat that often. In fact, he was only targeted once, and it was just a 6-yard play. I think that was actually one that was thrown behind the line of scrimmage, and he had to fight through guys. So Cory Trice, I think, is part of the movement that the Steelers defense is going through, because I think right now what the Steelers defense has a chance to do is be truly elite, because again, you got your stars. Patrick Queen fits in that star role. I think he's getting that kind of money, but there are lots and lots of players who I think, on this team that can be glue players, guys that fit in between the stars, that aren't necessarily the star attraction, but can be a very good thing for the Steelers. And again, Cory Trice fits into that mold. Dante Jackson fits into that mold. Keeanu Benton fits into that mold. Marvin Leal fits into that mold. All those things add up to me that it would make a whole lot of sense if the Steelers end up being one of the best defenses in the NFL. Again, they ranked 6th last year in scoring. I think they can rank, higher than that. And I think that they can rank higher than that. And also I think they can rank pretty high when it comes to, not just points scored, but also yards allowed, and, rushing yards allowed and passing yards allowed, and getting back to, sacking the quarterback more often. I think all those things add up when you look at the pieces that are available to them. The Steelers defense isn't just top heavy with great starters. It is heavy because it has a depth to it. And I think it's a depth to the Steelers defense that hasn't really been around for some time. And that allows people to be more rested, to deal with injury better. I think all of this could be very good signs for the Steelers defense moving forward, that they can actually coalesce, come together, and be an elite group. If they can do that, again, it takes a little bit of pressure off this offense to have to figure things out so quickly. But certainly certainly right now, I think the Steelers, they have time to figure that out. Guys have been hurt. They want to see guys in. Beanie Bishop didn't play in this game, presumably for an injury. They kind of got in the way there, but they're very close. They're a lot closer than the offense is to figuring it out. But I think that the Steelers defense, they're doing some figuring it out. And I think it's a really good sign that they're going to be that nasty of a team when the season starts against the Atlanta Falcons. But with all that being said, that'll do it for us here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Cutter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here in the Locked On Steelers podcast every Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers. We got more guests lined up all throughout this week, we'll have you ready for the next preseason game coming against the Detroit Lions. It's going to be a fun week here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We'll see you then here on the next episode.